Do you ever wonder what those contact forms on websites actually do? Today, we're gonna build a contact form like you'd see on a bunch of other websites end to end. You're gonna build the front end in React Next.js. You're gonna handle the API side with a Next.js API handler. And then finally, we're actually gonna go ahead and send an email. Once we've built the basic thing, we're gonna make it look good. That's part of our refinement. And so it's actually going to be user-friendly. And then finally at the end, we're gonna go ahead and see how we can gold plate it a little bit, add a little bit extra. So let's dive in and get started. First, what are we actually building? Before you start coding anything, think about the requirements. Make sure you spend just a little bit of time, could be a couple of minutes, and make sure you understand what you're trying to build. So here, if we have our browser window, let's say, we're not gonna worry about the rest of the website, right? You can drop this into any website that you want. We're just gonna make this very simple and kind of assume that there's already a website built around it, right? We're building the contact form part of this. So we're gonna have something that asks for your name. We're going to ask for your email address. And this is just so we can respond later, right? And then lastly, we're gonna have some sort of message that you wanna send. And this will be probably a little larger. So if this is an input and this is an input, this will be a text area. And all of this together is your form. And this is then going to fire off. Let's move this kind of over here. This is going to fire off an API request, right? So now we have the server, and this is going to receive the incoming message and do something with it. Now, the reason we need to have the server side of this is everything we have over here in the client, this is all going to be public information, right? Someone can look at the code, inspect the elements, and they can see what our form is doing. So what our form is doing is not secret. What is secret is whatever's happening on the server. We don't want to expose where the message is going or any underlying sort of issues, or we don't want to expose basically the secrets of the server, right? And so we keep all that stuff server side, and the form simply sends it to that. And then we'll use generally cross-origin access controls cores, so people can't just make requests to our server right from their websites. That's built in to Next.js. So then we'll be relatively secure. You could make this more secure with a cross-site forgery key, cross-site forgery access key. But we're not going to go through, we're not going to do that. So we're just going to assume that this is like a relatively basic contact form. And we're going to fire it off to the server. So that being said, we are going to build this. So we're going to create next app, but I'm going to do something new. -E is example, and I've created a little, let's see, GitHub, Ethan, let's do this over here because I don't know what's going to pop up. I've created for myself a little repository, next app starter. So this is public. So I've created a next app starter, which will allow me to simply fire this off, and it'll use this as a template for our Next.js project. Now this simply installs Next, uses the app directory, and we're going to call it contact form, and it will also install and configure Tailwind for us. So that way we can just jump right into coding. Now this does use the app directory in Next.js because the app directory is awesome. Server components are very cool. So you're gonna learn a little bit about that if you haven't played around with them yet. So as this loads up and starts, fire off Visual Studio Code while we're ready. All right, so cd contact form, and we will launch yarn dev in a second. So now, all right, So now you're in Visual Studio and you can see we already have Tailwind here. It's already installed, it's already configured. So we are ready to go. We've also already cleaned up the app directory. So we can now double check that we're running everything correctly on localhost 3000, not whatever that was. Need to start the dev server, fire this off. All right, and refresh. It's always good when you're going through and developing, make sure you're incrementally building, testing, end-to-end what you're doing. So if something's not working correctly, you can catch it as soon as possible. So we're waiting a couple seconds for this to go. And voila, we know it's working, even though I deleted all the contents, because we can jump over to Visual Studio, and here we can just do hello, save, allow that, and now we have hello here. All right, so we need to have a form, and the form is going to use the onSubmit action to capture the input and send it to our API. Now, that is an event handler, so we need to make this a client component. So we're not even going to worry about too much of the server right now. We're just gonna go ahead and make this form. So export const, we'll just call it contact form, and fire this off. I'm also going to turn Copilot off here just so we don't cheat too much, right? So we're going to return. We can do our JSX first here. Come on. So we're going to return, do our JSX first here, return the form, and we're going to have, we said, an input. This is type text, and we'll just do placeholders for right now to make this quick. Name, same thing here. Well, this is going to be email, and then a text area. And this will be your message. So save, and now on the page, we want to include this. So it's just going to pull in, oh, we've named it contact form, that automatically for us. Save, go back to Chrome, refresh. All right, so we have a name here, an email, and a text area. These are all the elements we created. Not really pretty as of right now, but that's okay. We know it's working. So once again, in this contact form, we're looking for pure functionality to start, right? Don't go crazy on making it pretty until you have it working. So we're going to have state. Now there's two ways we can do the state. We can either have state stored in one object, or we can have 3 different states for each one. I'm gonna do 3 different states for each one just to start, and we'll see kind of how it looks. So here we have name, set name equals use state. Why do you do that? So here we have name, set name, use state. And we can just change this to email, correct that. And let's just call this message, right? So set email, set message, make sure we're importing that. And now for each one of these, we're going to add in the bindings, right? So value equals name, value equals email, value equals message, and then the onChange handler, right? So here, we're gonna let Prettier do all the hard work for us. Set name, target value, copy that, paste it here, except this is set email. And lastly, for the text area, on change set message target value, same thing. All right, so now we have all of our data bound up. And now we can do const on submit to test this entire thing from working, right? So this is our form on submit handler. And so we're just going to console.log all the information. Let's call it data and do name, email, message, and then on submit. Save, go back to Chrome, refresh. Oh, we need to mark this as a client component. I said that in the beginning and then didn't do it. Classic. Always gets me even now. So we have our console. So if we do enter, it will submit. Update. Did not. So we need a button here. Button submit type submit. All right, so now we're getting the data, which is none. So Ethan test.com, hello. And then of course we need to prevent the default here. So this is a form event, so prevent default. All right, refresh just for good measure, get rid of all that. Okay, so Ethan test, this should yell at me because it's not a real test, email, and hello. So now we have the form that we've created and we are good to go. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to send this to an API. So that's going to be in Pages API. That's where we're going. We're just going to queue a new endpoint and we will call it, let's just call it contact. And here we're going to dump in let's do Next.js docs TypeScript API. There's a very specific, their API route, their handler, they have a TypeScript, here we go. We want that, right? Know where you can copy and paste all the code because that is insanely useful. All right, so now we're going to respond if we hit this up. Let's just do, the important thing here is to know what data we got, right? So sending something back doesn't really matter, so we'll just keep that for now. So console.log data on the server side, and this is going to be request.body is the name of it. So now, from our form, we can hit /API/contact and send the data. And so that's what we're going to do in the event handler. So here, we're going to mark this as an async method, try catch error any, and then fetch. We'll just do a const res equals this. So now we can hit up API contact, and for the body we're going to send our content here as a JSON object. So we're going to just do name, email, message, and that should be sufficient. And then the headers, we want to mark this as content type application JSON, so it's a JSON request, and then we'll wait on it. We don't really care what this is, and then just in case anything goes wrong, it's always a good idea to make sure you have this, and we will simply record the error so we can debug faster. Now this is of course going to be on the server, right? So make sure you're watching those server logs as well. So do a hard refresh to make sure it's working. Ethan test.test.com. Hello. Now when we submit here, oops, we forgot to do method post. It is a post request. This will fast refresh, so you can just try it again. All right, it worked, even though it doesn't look like it. Here's our contact payload. We sent this information. And the response we got was that response from our API server. And now when you look at here, this is our server data, right? Data, you can see that we successfully got it. So we're so close. We have our contact form, which is now sending information. We have our API route, which is handling that information. Lastly, we need to do something with this information. Now you can do a lot with the contact form. You don't just have to send an email if you don't want to. You can send it to Slack. You can fire off a message into your Discord. You can turn it into a text message and send it to your best friend. You can make it a phone call and spam your spouse. Like whatever you want to do, you now have control of it. Now that it's reached the server side, you can do whatever you want with this data, right? Just because they entered it in like this contact form doesn't mean you have to send an email. Now saying all that, we're gonna send an email because that's kind of like, you know, the whole shebang end to end here. So how do we send an email? We don't really want to connect to an email server ourselves. We don't really want to muck with SMTP. We don't really want to do all that stuff. Instead, we want a email API, right? This is what we want. We want to be able to send an email with an API. So SendGrid is a fine example. Mailgun is a fine example. Don't know what that is. Mailjet, I vaguely heard of. Any of these are probably fine. Twilio apparently has an email API. You're going to have to sign up for these services and you're going to have to make an account because they are very careful about spam protection. And if you are sending spam emails, that's something that they're not going to allow, right? So all of these services need some sort of an account. So saying that, I already have an account with Mailgun, actually. So we're going to use that. Now, you don't have to use Mailgun. I'm just using it because I already have my account, right? So don't feel like you need to use this particular one at all. Boop. Oh, well, it's a new browser session, so we're going to log in. Probably could have waited a little bit longer there. All right, so this is the Mailgun dashboard. You can see I have a couple of random domains and stuff, but the mg.ethamic.com, this is the thing that is already set up to send emails. It's the Mailgun subdomain that I have to send some emails. So we're going to go ahead and use that. So I'm gonna pop this over here and take a look. Now what we really need here is the API key, and that's what we're going to need to send emails. And otherwise, we're just going to kind of look at their documentation and use that as our starting point. So Mailgun send email docs, boom, 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 documentation, Mailgun. I guess we'll do quick start guide. Sending an email seems perfect. This is what we want. And they already have different libraries up here. We're using Node.js, so we're just gonna fire off this particular thing and jump in. So send via API. Again, this is exactly what we want. We're gonna literally copy and paste this entire thing and dump it in here, and then we're gonna change it to make it what we need to do. So all of this can go up here. Now, they have us add two libraries. One is form data, so we should need to stop this. Yarn add save exact form data, and the other is their Mailgun API itself. So we'll go ahead and just fire that off. And then we're gonna wanna import these using the new ES6 imports. So import form data from form data, import Mailgun from Mailgun. So we don't need these anymore. We're gonna keep that just in case. So now, I'm just gonna update that, form data. We have our Mailgun client, username API and the API key. So this is going to be process.environment Mailgun API key. Because it's not prefixed with next public, it's not going to be a public environment variable. And then the domain will do the same thing, process.environment, mailgun domain. You're gonna have to set these in the environments that you're in, and then you'll be able to fire this off. So this is gonna complain because these can be undefined. So we'll just default them to empty strings just in case they don't exist. We'll still get an error when we try and fire this off. So from contact form, and let's call this, because let's call it contact, right at mgethanmic.com. That's the domain that we're probably going to use. To, now this is who we're going to send it to, right? So here we can just do whoever you want, but we'll do my email. Don't spam me. Subject, new contact form, exclamation mark. And then this is going to be, well, the request.body.message. So as you remember in our, right, we have a name, we have an email, and we have a message. Now we want to send all this along. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, hello, you have a new form entry from, and this is going to be, let's just go over here, const name email message equals request.body. I like to kind of move this stuff around, so like it's kind of like that. So from name, and then we'll just do a space, and then $, email, and then we'll just put in the actual message here. Great. So now is our message data, and then client messages, it's going to create it, and then the promise is going to resolve, it'll log it, otherwise it'll catch it, and then we're going to send this off. So we're going to do this a little differently. We're going to do a promise await, which means we need to make this an async handler. Whoops, an async handler. And this is the email response. And because it's going to explode, most likely, catch error any console error sending email. Whoops. Jeez Louise. All right, great. So we don't really need this response. You can log it if you want, or just kind of keep track of it. But we'll just log it for now and then delete it later, just so we can kind of see what's happening. And then we're going to change this actually to be submitted true. Just something simple so our API knows who it is. Great. So we need to add a Mailgun API and a Mailgun domain to our environment. So we're going to create a new environment.local file at the top level. And this will have this. And this will have this. So mgethanmic.com. And then we will toss in a sending API key. Oh, I don't have one for this domain. bring this over here. And we're going to save it in here. And now, fire this off once again. Let's see if this works end to end. So we're gonna hard refresh, make sure we have the latest of everything, latest and greatest. This is Ethan. We're gonna pretend test@test.com. Hello world, fired off. All right, well, enter didn't work. But here we go, submitted true. And now, new contact form. Boom! In your inbox, new email from, name was not there, test@test.com. Fantastic. So, the name was blank. Oh, did I just not type a name? Update, I just didn't type a name. All right, great. Now we have that working. So end to end, we have built a contact form in React and Next.js. This form accepts 3 different inputs: the name, the email, and a message. You made an API request, which accepts it, and then it allows you, and then it takes that and it sends it off as an actual email to an email you configured. We used Mailgun as our API provider, and that's how you can build this end to end. It works, but it ain't pretty. So let's go ahead and do some refinement. So to refine what we've done here, we need to really work on our user experience. We need to make sure that our user can really go through and use this. Now, I don't have a final image in mind, right? But I know that it needs to look a lot better. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and say, Tailwind CSS libraries, right? We want something that plays nicely with Tailwind. Let's try Daisy UI. I've never actually tried this at all, right? But what we need is we need an input component. Okay, so let's go to data input. We need text input. What do we look like? Looks like this. There's a border. They have labels. Labels are good. Primary color. Primary color seems pretty good. Accent color. This isn't my favorite library. Kind of looking at it, and it's all right, but I've never played with it before. Text area looks something similar. So let's go ahead and give it a go. Again, this is what this channel is all about, right? Building stuff, experimenting, trying it out. So let's go ahead and yarn add, save exact, Daisy UI, and then it wants us to add a plugin in our Tailwind. Tailwind configuration, plugins. All right, Daisy UI. So that's the installation, and then it has a bunch of, it looks like examples. So let's go to use. Once you've installed it, you can use component classes. So instead of making a button using the utilities, you can just do button. So now we're like right back to Bootstrap, right? People remember Bootstrap. This was it. You did it this way, which feels a little bit like a step backwards. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little interesting, but you know what? We're gonna try it out. So configuration, what do we got here? This is our Tailwind, style true, theme space, utils. We're just gonna go with the defaults for now. Let's see, so BG secondary benefits. So it looks like primary, you can use these color names. They already have a primary focus, and a secondary, and a theme. Okay, how to use Daisy themes. Let's just see what the default theme is. I guess we can keep this up, and we'll go from there. So we're gonna fire off our dev server once again. We are going to go back into our contact form here. And we're gonna go down to this. So instead of doing an input, right, we're gonna just check out the docs. This is what you should be doing all the time when you're building something with third-party libraries. Go to text input. And we're going to see what the JSX looks like here. All right, so they just say class name, input, and then full width to make sure it is good. So because, let's just go and toss it in here and see what we get. Input full width. Okay, this is the text area. You don't need to worry too much about that. We probably want it to be primary to make it a little nicer, right? So let's do, let's see, input bordered, input primary. Looks like kind of what we're looking for here. Okay. It's working. Not my favorite, but it's working. With that, let's just go ahead and kind of wrap this all up and put it together. So we're gonna do the same thing here. This is probably, my guess is text area, question mark. Text area bordered, right? Any good API is gonna be pretty consistent. Refresh, refresh, refresh. Looks like that last one is not it. So text area, primary JSX, text area, and text area primary. All right, well, that is correct. I just, oh, yeah, okay. Text area primary. All right, this needs a ton more spacing. So we're gonna do class name. So we're gonna do flex and then flex column. And then we're going to do gap 8 to give it a lot of spacing between each of these. Now it's starting to look like a form. We're gonna go to the page, and on the main form here, we want it to be centered, and we want it to not be right against the top, right? So margin top, let's just pick something big to bump it down the page. And then we're going to do MX auto to make sure this block is put into the middle. And then we're gonna give it a max width of like, I don't know, 4 XL. All right, now we're starting to talk. We want labels on this, right? Labels are great for accessibility. They're great to show the user what they should be doing. And the placeholder shouldn't necessarily be the label. The placeholder should show the type of content you want them to add. So going back to our form and jumping back over to our input API, we want something with a label. So they have just a label as their separate thing. And they also did a form control label out here. So they do label and label alt. So we're just gonna do this around our input. So we want a container, which is gonna wrap all this. We're gonna type this in. We don't want this. Label text. We're gonna keep this simple. We'll just say full name. And then we'll take this input here and move it up here. And now take a look. What does it look like? All right, it's inherited our flexing, which we don't want it to do in a bad way. So for this, we'll do class flex, flex call, because we want them stacked on top of each other. And that did not do at all what I expected. So this label, oh, the input, sorry, we put the input inside the label. Whoops. So we want that here. And now don't forget to like delete things. All right, full name, boom, there you go. This didn't really do any styling on the label itself, which is kind of like meh. You kind of want this to be, let's just do font semi-bold. Full name, and then we can do, instead of name here, for this, we can do, I don't even know what a great example name would be. Me, I'm a great example name. All right, perfect. So now we can do the same thing down here, right? Div, pull in the div, grab the label, pull this in, same thing. And We then want the input inside the div, toss it here, save, go back. Full name, perfect, except this is email. And then the placeholder can be something more useful, such as name@example.com. All right. And then lastly, we'll do the same thing for our text area. Surround it in a div, drop in the label, take the text area, drop it in your message. We're not going to have any placeholder here. We're just going to let them type whatever message they want. And then lastly, we want a button that is not quite so unfriendly. And so our button here, let's do a primary button, I suppose. Seems like a good option. Button primary here. And we're just gonna add that as the class. Name, button primary. All right, so once again, we can do my full name, Ethan@ethanmic.com. Go ahead and email me. Message, hello, this is a great form. Thanks for sharing. Subscribe. All right, and then make sure we're watching the network. Submit, 200 OK. And our latest email over here, boop, 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 boop. Fantastic. So now we've kind of gone through and refined this really nicely. So we, started with our very basic, it worked, but basic functionality. Some of the key things we did was to make sure it wasn't full width. This wouldn't probably be full width on a website anyways, but anywhere where the content doesn't have to be quite so wide, you can just shrink it down and have it take up the center of the page, and it'll grab the user's attention and make sure they're focusing on the middle thing, and it won't just appear way too wide. It's also really nice because then it's easy to adapt to mobile if you're going to do that. And we used a brand new library, haven't used this before, Daisy UI. And finally, we have kind of run through and created the full form. So that is all I would do for refinement on this. And you could probably go ahead and send this and ship it, and it would be a great contact form. But it's not a perfect contact form, right? Like, if we really wanted to be a little extra, if we really wanted to gold plate the shit out of this, there is definitely one thing I would add. What this needs is a thank you page. It needs to say, yes, you submitted, we got it. We need to give the user the feedback. Now, the simplest way to do this, right, could be an alert. It could just be like, boop, a little pop-up. It could also be, you could just clear the form and be like, well, the default action here is you submitted it successfully, so we're gonna reset the form, right? But we can do better, okay? We can have more fun with this. So the important thing is making sure the user understands that their form was actually submitted. So we're gonna have a new piece of state here, right? And we're gonna do const is submitted, and then set submitted use state. And we're gonna set this to false to start, right? And so now we can set submitted only on if res.status is 200. Well, we'll set this to be true, right? If it was successful, we'll set it to be true. So this means that we're gonna finish the network request and make sure it was successful before triggering this actual event. And now we can add in a catch. So here we go. What we're gonna say is submitted. If that's true, then do this. Otherwise, show the form. Now we need something here. So let's go ahead and just add something real quick. Let's just call it success, right? We're not going to give them a way to go back because we don't want them to go back. We don't want them to submit multiple entries. So now we're going to say, okay, test and test at test.com and test, we don't care, and submit. Boom. Now we have a success page. So the success page, let's say we want it to be big and bold. So text center, font semi-bold, and text, let's do obnoxiously big, 3XL. Thank you for your message. So now, once it's been submitted, it says, congrats, thank you for your message. You've gotten, we'll take it from here, right? We can even add something like, we'll try and respond to you, or we read every message, or something cute like that. Or something cute. You know what this needs? This needs confetti. This needs some confetti. So let's go ahead. I haven't used this library either, I swear to God. Yarn, add, save exact, React confetti. Let's see how we want to use this. We're gonna do React confetti here. We're going to say, so they have use window size, but I don't think we actually need to do that, right? The recommended, but it's gonna use the default height. That's fine. This is already a client component, so it's only running on the client, right? So let's just toss in confetti. And then we're gonna start this again. And then we're gonna go back to our lovely little form. Now we need to refresh the page because we stopped the dev server, right? So it hasn't picked up any changes. But what we want to have happen is we want to have the user go, my great name, email at example.com. Thank you. This has been so cool. And then they're gonna submit it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your message. Confetti for everybody. I guess it just keeps doing this confetti forever, which is a lot of confetti. But on the flip side, it's exactly the kind of gold plating shenanigans we're going to be doing on this channel. So there you have it. End to end, we built a form using React Next.js. We sent an email with Mailgun. We made it look pretty. And then we gold plated the shit out of it, which is just absolutely fantastic. So if you enjoyed this, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you got this far, I'm very impressed. And feel free to write in the comments anything you would like to see me build, or send me an email. I wrote it like 13 times in this video, so I'm sure you can find it. Until next time, happy coding.